The children were preserving her from the worms of the earth and from the prowling beasts of prey. The mother was not turned into a sacrifice or the blood preserved on her own personal account so much as on the account of the family or tribe to which the blood belonged. The mother as a sacrifice would be very sacred indeed. Her representative zootype was adopted later to be eaten in a similar manner. Okay, moving right along, because it's pretty much the same thing we just talked about. Okay, gradually the blood brotherhood began to usurp the blood motherhood, then finally establishing the patriarchate. The pre-totemic people had no rites and ceremonies of pubescence. Totemism began with two women, the mother and the eldest daughter. They had no rite of pubescence because the concept of a male and a female was new. But even prior to the totemic time, in pre-totemic time, it was still a matriarchal system. When they arrived in the beginning of your totemic time, again, it was a matriarchal system that was actually in power. Okay, the Arunta tribe say it had been found that many of the younger women died in consequences of unlimited promiscuous intercourse with men who were unrestrained and women unprepared by the opening rite when there was as yet no law of taboo. The opening rite was preparatory and considered necessary to benefit the young women for sexual intercourse and also protect them previously from savage treatment devised by mothers to protect their daughters. So this is talking about the same thing we talked about a minute ago as far as that introcision. It was devised by women to protect their daughters because, like I said, there was no such thing as marriage. You know, after they got their introcision and everything done, it was some sort of notification. it was a notification in different ways for different tribes, but it was a notification given to the men of the tribe to let them know that, okay, this is fair game. This is a female that has actually reached a certain age or whatever. So it was no such thing as marriage. Marriage came later. Okay, in the Osirian drama, Isis and Nephthys are the two mothers, the two sisters, and the two wives of Osiris. In the original story of Adam, he had two wives, Lilith and Hawa, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. Moving right along. The human race originated from Mother Earth in two classes, the forest folk and the troglodytes, born of the tree and born of the rock. The first stage were children of the earth, or earth mother. The mother is then divided or followed by the two women who were distinguished from each other by the emblems of birthplace, tree and rock. Okay, that's just talking about the two origins of birthplace. Okay, because as we explore in the Odyssey, that's one of the things that Penelope asked Odysseus. Okay, we'll take a quote from that. When Penelope says to Odysseus, "Tell me thy lineage and whence thou art, for thou dost not spring from the ancient tree nor from the rock," meaning that he must be an immortal, whereas there are two types of an origin that is of earth. Okay, so basically that's in Homer's poem, the Odyssey. So that gives further validity to this. Okay. All right, moving right along. The two poles, north and south, wood and stone, represent the two female ancestors, and the totems of subdivision represent the blood brothers, thus affiliated to the mother blood, followed finally by the fatherhood. Two Egypts, two Nubias, two earths, upper and lower, two houses, earth and heaven. I mean, it correlates to multiple different things, but before you have one connotation of that duality could be representative of those two sisters. Case in point, where you have the vulture of Upper Egypt and the cobra of Lower Egypt. So that's just further substantiation for that. Okay, let's talk about marriage a little bit. As far as marriage began as a recognized, if regulated, right of all the brothers to ravage every maiden as she came of age, and thus to make a woman of her for the tribal connubium. Various customs tend to show that capture in marriage originated as a mode of rescuing or ransoming the woman from the clutches of the general community, in which the female was common to all the males of the group. Pretty much how we just talked about. There was no marriage at one period of time. That was a later innovation. Okay, in special marriage of individuals, pair of women had to be captured and carried off from the group. Only instead of being captured, we might say rescued by the individual and his friends from being the promiscuous property of the community. Hence the custom of compensation to the group or later parents for permitting the female to become private property in personal marriage. So so in certain tribes or whatever, certain places, it's customary to give a dowry to the father of the family for marrying their daughter or whatever. You actually not like you have to, in a way you kind of have to pay, but you have to give a dowry, so many cows or so much of something of value to be able to ask for a certain person's daughter in hand in marriage. The primitive rite of connubium was first consummated by all of the males of the totemic group, not by an individual or husband. So that's pretty much what we just talked about. It wasn't any one individual that that picked up a female or whatever, they had sex or whatever and consummated their marriage and it was all good. It was a group. She belonged to the tribe because it was about producing children. It was about fertility. Women were more looked upon as a archetype of fertility. Okay, moving right along. A change in human descent from the motherhood to the fatherhood is apparent in Egyptian mythology as early as the time of Ptah, the father of Atumre. The mother, human or divine, was primordial. Next came the sisters, then the brothers, the same in mythology as in totemism. Okay, and this is why we were talking about in the introduction how it's important how about these periods of time where the deities actually ruled and physically walked the face of the earth. To some people, this might seem kind of far-fetched or whatever, but as we can see, it's instrumental in us actually having an understanding of when the matriarchy started and when the patriarchal system actually overtook the matriarchal system. So that whole Zep Tepi that we harp on so much from volume 2 all the way up to now is really significant as far as getting an understanding of this, because it started so far back in the history of the world that if we don't acknowledge certain things, we'll be hard pressed to really find an honest date or an honest idea of when these things took place. Okay, moving right along. Previous to the dynasty of Ptah, there were 7 brothers born of the sevenfold motherhood. When there was as yet no father individualized, 6 of these were pre-human. For instance, Sut, the male hippopotamus; Sebek, the crocodile; Shu, the lion; Hapi, the ape; Apuet, the jackal; Kebesenef, the hawk; and 1, the elder Horus, was human as a child of Isis, the blood mother. The 7 souls are commonly reckoned as 6 plus 1. The 6 are pre-anthropomorphic. Okay, that's pretty much what we were talking about a little bit earlier, about how the 7 sons of Ptah, that's a recurring theme. The 6 sons plus 1, the father being Ptah, in some cultures or some traditions is the 6 sons plus the 1 mother, or the 6 daughters plus the 1 mother. Even sometimes the 7 daughters plus the 1 mother in certain traditions. So it flip flops. Now there came a time in Egypt when the brothers who had previously been the children of the mother were called the sons of Ptah, and all their powers were comprehended in the unity of the God who was portrayed as both father and mother in one person. Okay, see, at this point in time, it begins to change over from the matriarchal system to the patriarchal system, and these aren't people that are doing it. These aren't average everyday Joe Blows that are doing it. These are actual deities that are given responsibility for actually doing this. And if we actually look at the Zep Tepi of ancient Tamaray, if we actually look at the Sumerian kings list, these are long periods of time where these beings actually were understood to have ruled the planet. I think Ptah's reign was well over 1,000 years. So these are gradual periods of time. Okay. Another quote: "It is certain that in this the male impersonates the mother because he acts as if in gestation with the child and sometimes undergoes a fictitious partition. But the supreme peculiarity of this primitive mystery is that the male parent not only acts the part of the mother but also of the father, both parents in one person." Okay. And as we'll see in a second or two, how we arrive at rites such as circumcision and even subincision. A lot of these tribal rites or whatever, they came about to perpetuate this whole thing of the or they're symbols of the patriarchy overtaking the matriarchal system. Okay, in Akkad or Babylonia, the group of 7 males is divided into as the father with his 6 sons. Many other cultures have divisions of 6 brothers and 1 father. Okay, that's just like what we were just talking about, how at one point in time in the matriarchal system it might be 6 brothers and 1 mother, or 6 daughters and 1 mother, or something like that. But as the patriarchal system took over, a lot of your things that were established in the matriarchal system, they were attributed to men, and it got kind of changed over. Okay, Atum represents the primal being who was the earliest evolved as perfect man. The solar mythos was preceded by the lunar and the stellar mythos, Earth Mother and the elemental powers. So prior to Atum or Atum Re or even Amun Re was a solar deity. Prior to Amun Re, you had lunar deities that took precedence, and even prior to that, you had stellar deities that took precedence. Okay, it is in Atum, the son of Ta, that man was perfected. In him, the matriarchate is completely superseded by the father, right, or derivation from the fatherhood. So at this point, this one individual who was understood to be a real person, this deity Atum Re or Atum, who's recorded to have actually existed, was one of the individuals, or the individual, according to Gerald Massey, who was understood to have completed the process of overtaking the matriarchal system with the patriarchal system. Okay, Kuvade is linked to Ta, and subincision is linked to Atum. Okay, Kuvade, Couvade, if I'm pronouncing it right, a custom in some cultures in which when a child is born, the father takes to bed as if bearing the child and submits himself to fasting, purification, or tattoos. Okay, but it said subincision was attributed to Atum. Okay, what is subincision? Subincision is a form of body modification consisting of urethrotomy, in which the underside of the penis is incised and the urethra slit opened lengthwise from the urethral opening toward the base. The slit can be of varying degrees. Okay, it sounds real exotic. Okay, the father as God takes the mother's place. The matriarchate terminates in the mythology of Egypt. Okay, so all these things culminate the whole process of the changing from matriarchal system to patriarchal system. And like I said, the brotherhoods superseded the motherhood. Okay, Tum is described as giving birth to Hu and Sa as the children of him, who now unite the father with the mother as divinity in one person. Okay, another quote: the ritual father Atum draws the blood from the genitalia of a divine being who is both male and female, blended in the formation of the father-mother, from whom the soul of blood was now derivable. The drops of blood are described as issuing from the person of Atum when he performed the rite of subincision or mutilation on himself in the generation now attributed to the solar deity, considered to be male as well as female, or finally male instead of female, end quote. So, and we can actually see that to be true, because when we look at the Enad of Heliopolis, we see Atum, we see Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Aset, Asar, Satut, Nephthys. Okay, with Atum being the first one. And Atum, according to the story, Atum masturbates and ejaculates and gives birth to Shu and Tefnut by himself. So thus he's acting as both the mother and the father in that situation. There's no female counterpart as is told in that story. Okay, moving right along. Another quote: thus the basis of being was shifted from the mother blood to that of blood and spirit assigned to the fatherhood. From the cutting of the male member now attributed to Atumre, we infer that the rite of circumcision and of subincision was a mode of showing the derivation from the human father in suppression of the motherhood. Okay, in the Pita Pita and Cognate Bola dialects, the term Mako Mahra denotes the man with the vulva. Okay, which shows that the oval slit was cut up on the penis as a figure of the female and a mode of assuming the motherhood. So basically, what Massey is saying right there, he's correlating that information to Atum performing his ritual on himself. He's basically saying that cut, the sub-incision, is to make the penis mimic the appearance of a vagina. Okay? So he can be both the father and the mother at the same time. Alright? Another quote. If, as the history asserts, they dedicated to the female in earlier times and were afterwards circumcised in a covenant made with the deity as God the Father, Re, circumcising on the heel of foreskin, there were two covenants, one sealed in the blood of the female, one in the blood of the male, and both were applied to the deity according to sex. Okay, so basically what we're getting at here is prior to the whole concept of there being a covenant with the father as it pertains to the patriarchal system, and really as it pertains to like your three monotheistic religions, it's from Islam to Christianity to Judaism, where we have a covenant with the father, you know, in the blood of Abraham and all this stuff like that, or whatever the case may be, and the descendants coming from Abraham, father of many nations, and all this stuff like that, and the father gets prominence or whatever. Prior to that, it was a covenant of the mother. Okay. And even from a biblical perspective, when we talk about Adam and Eve, Adam is told to cleave to his wife, join her family. Okay, so moving right along, the zootype being adopted as a badge of distinction, the primeval coat of arms, it was a custom for the human being to enter into a brotherhood of blood. That is, men were not born of the same mother or of two sisters could extend the natural tie of blood by a typical right to others who were born of different mothers. In this way, the larger kin, clan, or tribe was formed on the basis of brotherhood under some totemic sign. So this right here, this is the beginning, or not really the beginning, but the extension of your whole secret societies and stuff like that. That whole blood brotherhood or whatever. They supersede the motherhood and your whole blood brotherhood. This is the origins of what we refer to as, you know, if you want to take it there, masonry or whatever the case may be, or your whole concept of secret societies. They extended it beyond the mother blood, where individuals of other clans could they could be linked together, and they could form a brotherhood on that level. Okay, moving right along, in Egypt, and right now we're talking again about the pillar and the tree. In Egypt, both the pillar and the tree were pedestals for the gods, and both were blended in the tree pillar or tat of Ptah. And as images of the mother, both were Beth or abode, as bringer forth of the divinity or spirit, which was the object of worship, as was the god of Jacob in the conical pillar, and of Horus in the tree. There were two types of divine abode, which represented the two women or sisters who were the two mothers, bringer forth of the race in the beginning. Okay, again, it's talking about the tree and the conical pillar. The tree, or what was the tree, later became the phallic symbol, and the conical pillar, in some connotations, is viewed as an image of a breast. In some connotations, is viewed in the image of a mound, which is another phallic symbol. But in its origin, it has its origin in the matriarchal system. So, moving right along. Human blood was often poured out on earth as a sacrificial offering for food. Food was the supreme object to primitive people. There were tribes that sacrificed victims and buried them. For very early times, the sacrifice of a victim was solemnized and followed by the phallic feast, whether in the corroboree of the Arunta or the Christian agape. First, the sacrificial victim is slain and eaten ante lisum at the evening meal or Last Supper, and next the festival of reproduction was celebrated in the agape. So again, that's going back to the whole concept of your Last Supper and everything like that. And again, a lot of these concepts, this is how we arrive at a lot of these concepts as far as modern Christianity, modern religions, period. It comes straight out of a lot of these tribal customs. And I know, it's a lot of pastors and people out there saying, the devil's releasing all this information and to undermine, religion or whatever the case may be. I mean, if that's the best you can do, this is information that's been here for a long time, and this is the foundation that all religions on the planet were actually built on. So, I mean, it is what it is. It speaks for itself.